What's up? What's happening? Welcome here to Lacrosse Now. I'm Travis Eldridge. He's Tom Eschen. We got some chaos entering this final week of the regular season for both men's and women's teams, jockeying for positioning, all sorts of things up for grabs. It's kind of like the beginning of the NCAA tournament in many ways, because for a lot of these teams, you got to make your conference tournament to have a chance at playing in the NCAAs. So it's all a process, and we all start this weekend.
Yeah, there's been some teams that have basically been in win or go home mode now for a couple weeks too.
Right.
It's been going back over the course of the month of April. So it's a fun time of year. We're wrapping things up a couple weeks to go for some teams of the regular season. We got the ACC tournament starting for the women this week. We got Emily Hawryschuk on the show today.
Yes, we do.
We had Army Navy, and those two games for the men and women were incredible. And what a win on the women's side for Army. Michelle Tumolo, their coach, joins the show, and Navy, the men, getting that win over Army. So two upsets on either side, rivalry games. Throw out the records, you know?
That's what they say. It worked out. That rivalry, one of the best in all of sports. We had a chance to talk to Michelle about what her first experience was like in that rivalry. A good one. She hits on all that.
Well for her.
But let's start with one of the leagues where it's been a bit all over the place as we try to figure out who's just going to be in the conference tournament come next weekend, and that's the Ivy League on the men's side. Because after it seemed like things had started to figure themselves out, and then this past weekend happened, and then we figured out that we actually still know nothing, because we now have 5 teams tied at 3-2. So I guess they're all technically tied for first place. You have Penn, who's done playing Ivy League games. They're in there at 3-3. So they have to just sit home and wait. Well, they've got other games to play, but they basically are just sitting, waiting to see what happens with everybody else. And then Dartmouth, who has yet to win a game, but I mean, they have a chance to play spoiler now against Brown in the final week of the regular season, as Brown will try to get to 4-2 with the win. So with this Ivy League, this weekend we've got Cornell at Princeton, Harvard at Yale, and Brown Dartmouth. Those are the 3 games left to figure out who's going to be the 4 teams in the Ivy League tournament. By the way, the top seed also hosts, so still a lot to figure out here. Which teams are in? Which teams are going to the Ivy League tournament, in your estimation, when we look into this final weekend of the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because you can pick any, 4 of those 6, and you'd be right. At this point. And the tiebreakers are what they are. The team that's going to host are what they are. But you have to also look at, this is just the Ivy League tournament. This is not my opinion about the NCAA tournament. Look at the way teams are playing right now, and there's no team hotter right now than Brown. So you've got Brown against Dartmouth, and to me, that's a game that Brown should win. We know Dartmouth is no slouch, but Brown is playing really good right now on both sides of the ball. They beat Cornell 13-8, and I know we talked about Cornell in the past, but I think at this point in the season, any win's a good win no matter who you are. We talked about it. We said, no, both of those teams are going sort of different directions. This would be a perfect trap game for Brown that Cornell could certainly win. And they do that. They beat Cornell this past weekend with Ryan Ogevin, who we had on the show, 0 points on 3 shots, which to me shows you a lot about how well Brown is playing as a whole offensive unit. Ryan Antonelli, Devin McClain, 4 goals and an assist. And then, of course, you have the goalie at the other end, Connor Theriot, 24 saves. So I see Brown as a shoo-in to make it just because of how well they're playing. And I don't care who they would have played at last game. I think that they could beat anybody in the Ivy League right now. It doesn't have to be Dartmouth. I think Brown playing so well with those wins starting to stack up at the right time of year. And they're a team that I know is going to get in no matter what. I feel like that to me is a given.
Yeah.
And you look outside of that, and you got those teams that are sort of tweeners on the line. And then the big games, Cornell, Princeton, Harvard, Yale. Those are the other 2 teams you look at this weekend. And you don't really, Princeton and Cornell both coming off losses.
Yeah, and so I want you try to figure out, what do we know? Because in a lot of cases, I feel like...
Well, that's why I started with Brown. I feel like I know Brown's coming in. You do know Brown. That is what I know.
What I feel like I know, and this weekend maybe put a bit of a damper on it, but I still feel like, even despite the losses this past weekend, I still feel like Princeton and Yale are the top 2 teams in the Ivy League when we look ahead to May in the NCAA tournament.
Are they going to win this weekend to get into their own tournament?
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I have the most confidence in the 2 of them as we look ahead as teams that could challenge for championship weekend. Now, you look at the matchups for both of them. I'll start with Harvard and Yale. Harvard is 6-0 at home this year. They just beat Princeton at home. Problem for Harvard, they have to go on the road to Yale this week, and they've lost both their games on the road here in Ivy League play against Cornell and Penn. So I think that's a problem for Harvard. They have been one of the, honestly, have been one of the best home teams in the country with what they've done there in Cambridge. I don't know if they can go on the road to Yale and win. So I like Yale in that one. So I'm going to put Yale in. Cornell is a team that, while early in the year felt like early in the Ivy League season, they were the team. And I think they had a chance here in the last couple of weeks, whether it was against Army or just this past weekend, to kind of solidify themselves as, okay, you know, we had a bit of it was like a little blip on the radar, but we are that team again. They haven't done that for me. So I like Princeton to finish off, and that game's at Princeton as well. So I like the two home teams in that case to secure those spots, get to 4-2. I do think Brown, as crazy as this season has been, and it would be so fitting if Dartmouth beats Brown and just creates more chaos here. So Dartmouth picks up their first Ivy League win of the year. But I do think Princeton, Yale, Brown, they all take care of business. They get the 4-2, and then you get the chaos with a bunch of teams tied at 3-3.
Yeah, the tiebreakers are what they are. You look at the way, Harvard has played, and I think it's interesting. They get that win over Princeton. I don't know if many people were expecting that, right?
And not how and the game played out in a way where, like, Princeton came back.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and then Harvard against that defense that we've said all along has been so good for Princeton, they go off. They scored 19 goals in that game.
Yeah, and I think Princeton has a good defense, but we've talked about this before. Their style, they're going to take you up and down. There's going to be a lot of goals played regardless. I actually think that they play similar to Yale. I mean, they had that epic game, earlier this season. Kyle Mullen for Harvard is the X factor to me. He had 18 saves against Princeton, and he also had 18 saves against Brown this year. You could argue that those are two of Harvard's biggest wins of the season. So to me, he could be a difference, especially in a game like this in which you are going to face a lot of really good players in Yale that can get on you. And Yale, a team that offensively we've seen can be very dangerous this year. When they get hot, they're hot. There's one thing also that I think is an X factor here. Matt Brandow, who we've talked about time and time again. I remember before the season I said, he is a Tewaaraton finalist. To me, I was projecting that. He leads the nation in points per game. And I know there's been talk about Carissa Gray. There's been talk about Logan Wisnauskas. And Matt Brandow should be the front runner right now. He's the best player in the best conference in the country. We've talked about the Ivy League with the 5 teams getting in. How could you leave out the best player from being your front runner to be a Tewaaraton finalist right now? Matt Brandow leads the nation in points per game. It's not like he's out there, just doing his thing and alongside this offense. He carries this offense at times. I know Leo Johnston is a big part of that, too, as a freshman, but Brandow's still getting his every single game. And to me, he needs to be respected as such because the Ivy League is respected as such.
Well, I mean, I think he has to be. He has to be. I mean, we were talking about, like, front runners in the Tewaaraton conversation. Like, he, to me, especially with how North Carolina has fallen off, especially offensively over the last couple of weeks, and Chris Gray has been as valuable maybe to any team in the country, as valuable for anybody, as any player to any team in the country. But, I mean, Matt Brandow not only is getting it done production-wise, but his team is going to be in the tournament. Carolina's not going to be in the tournament.
Right. And Yale right now is a top 10 team in the media poll. They're the 4th best RPI in the country. They probably have arguably some of the best wins of the season until Brown came on the scene and started winning their games. But there's been a lot of talk about Wisnauskas, rightly so.
Deserved.
Gray, because of his track record, the all-time points record. And then we had the conversation, who's the third guy? At this point, maybe one of those guys is the third guy. Brandow needs to be talked about in that top tier, in my estimation, because if you talk about the Ivy League as being this great conference that's going to get all these teams in, you need to start looking at who the best players are in that conference that stick out. Brandow sticks out every single game, and he's a huge part of their success. I don't see why not. He shouldn't be up in the front runner clearly at this point.
Well, and I think it goes into, like, who could beat Maryland? Because right now it's Maryland or the field. And if there's anybody, like, I feel like Yale has the ability to go on that kind of run if they turn it on at the right time. And Brandow all of a sudden not only is playing to help his team get in the championship, but is playing for a chance to win the award.
Yeah.
Because as good as Logan Wisnauskas has been, I think Logan Wisnauskas is the talk of the town for Tewaaraton because of what the team has done and how dominant they have been. If somebody somehow knocks Maryland off along the way, Wisnauskas is not having a Jared Bernhardt-type transcendent season where even if they lose, he's automatically the guy.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes this discussion with Brandow fascinating, because if Yale, and it would have been the same thing with Chris Gray. Like, Chris Gray leads North Carolina to this crazy run. I think you talk about him the same way. Brendan Nichtern from Army, I think, is a similar type of situation where a guy who's one of the top guys in points in the country maybe isn't getting enough recognition, but as soon as their team turns it on, like, they got a shot.
Yeah. I feel like the conference needs to be backed up a little bit better, and I think that leads into our next conversation we're going to have here today.
So you have a problem with the media poll.
Well, I don't have a
for the Ivy League.
We've revised this a bit. I don't have a necessarily problem with the media poll. I just wonder, when you look at these teams, are they where they should be? I guess is Virginia really the fourth best team in the country when you look at the teams they've beaten and the teams they've lost to? Virginia's best wins: they have 2 over North Carolina. They have 1 win over Notre Dame. That's it. And they have a loss to Duke and a loss to Maryland, both of which were pretty one-sided. And those are the 2 teams they played this year that are the top 10 in the RPI, the only 2 at that. Do they really deserve to be number 4 in the nation right now over some of these other teams? We talk about a team like Yale, a win over Princeton, number 2 in the RPI. Penn 5, BU 12. Their only losses are to 2 top teams, 10 teams in the RPI itself. Yale maybe should be a top 5 team right now. And then you go to those teams, 12, 13, 14, Harvard, Penn, Cornell. Really, the Ivy League talking about how great of a conference they are, the way they performed out of conference play, those teams with some of the wins they have and even their current RPIs factored in, how are they behind teams like Duke? Ohio State has some nice wins. I think they're a tweener there, but even Jacksonville, I know they're a nice story. That doesn't mean they're a top 10 team, and so on and so forth. What do you think?
So I think I agree with you in terms of, like, the Ivy League has been, because of what they did out of the conference, has been the best conference in the country. However, at some point, you can't just keep ranking those teams up high, even when they're losing to each other. Like Brown, Brown's a perfect example. Brown finds themselves, what are they ranked now this week? Number 5 in the country.
That's probably too high, to be honest.
Well, right, and in my, like, they've got
the 5th best team in the country.
Probably not.
Like, you watch them play.
Brown
You've seen the wins they've
Brown
had.
is probably the streakiest team in the country, because they went from losing 3 in a row, including losing to a UMass team at home that, like, I guess at the time felt like they were pretty good, but have shown to be right there, kind of in the middle of a crazy pack in the CAA. And so they went from that to all of a sudden having 3 of the better wins in the country with what they've done here the last 3 weeks. So you can say they're streaky. I don't know if they're the best. At some point, you have to look at, like, just eye test over resume. And, like, because at some point you have to figure out, like, if this team, I mean, this is at least for me.
If this team plays their best game, can they win it?
Or just,
right?
if this team's stacking up against this team, who do I think's going to win?
Yeah.
Because when I went into the poll this week, despite the fact that Princeton lost this week against Harvard, I still rank Princeton number 3, because as good as Rutgers has been at times this year, I don't think they're better than Princeton. Because we saw it, first of all, we saw it on the field. And even if they played again today, I would still pick Princeton.
Yeah.
And so, despite the fact that, like, I don't know how Princeton dropped all the way to 7 with the loss to Harvard, because Harvard's been good this year.
Harvard has the 11th best RPI in the country.
And you have, like, especially with this, what happened in the Ivy League this past week, you look at who won, and there were the teams that were desperate. Harvard had to win this week, because there's no way they're getting into the tournament if they didn't beat the Ivy League tournament. They didn't beat Princeton. And it also helped their NCAA tournament hopes, by the way, too. But there's no way they're getting in without a ton of other things happening if they didn't win that past week. And so you saw what happened in the fourth quarter. The more desperate team won. But you can't, Princeton on the road in that game, you can't just completely knock them off from what they've done the rest of the year.
Right.
So
you have to look at the whole body of work, yes.
So that's why I put a team like Princeton up there over the likes of a Brown or Yale, because I do think out of everybody in the Ivy League, Princeton has been the most impressive to me. And I would probably put Yale right after that, from the combination of the wins that they've had, but also, like, what I see their upside being as well.
And I think that you're able to see. I think you need to combine the two of them. I think the eye test, as we've said, I think for a long time has proven to sort of show us what these teams are all about. I think we said that about North Carolina for most of this year, and said, hey, yeah, they got this great RPI. They have what looks like a decent resume, but on the field, you're like, well, it might not work out at the end, and it hasn't, right? And that's been their story. I think Virginia might be a different story here. I look at their resume, to me, is so far off of some of these other Ivy League teams and a few of those, like a team like Maryland and Notre Dame even at this point. I don't know if I should include them or not just yet, but Virginia, to me, they have not, I don't know if they've ever really had a great game against a great team, right? They have, because on the eye test, they've won 2 championships in a row, but you also look and say, they haven't really put it together. I haven't seen them reach their potential yet.
You know what Virginia
Can you still give them the benefit of the doubt?
Well, you know what Virginia feels like this year? It feels like this past year's Alabama team that is a team that you like in terms of name recognition, what they've done. Virginia has earned the benefit of the doubt. They've won 2 straight championships. Every May they've gotten it done. They have earned the benefit of the doubt. The question now becomes, do they get it done? Because, like, if you look at what Alabama has done in those years, when they've gotten the benefit of the doubt from whether it's the national voters or the college football playoff committee, they get the benefit of the doubt, they get in, and then they prove them right. Typically, that's what we've seen. Now, Virginia, because, I mean, from what the voters and the media poll have said, they're going to end up with the top 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. Do they prove that the benefit of the doubt is right? I will say this Virginia team getting Matt Moore back, if he is healthy, I think that can be a difference maker for their offense, because you're right, there have been some questionable games. I still think that Notre Dame game is a really good one to show you what they're capable of, because they are capable of shutting you down at the defensive end and also scoring with the best teams in the country offensively.
Yeah.
That is their peak. We've seen it at different times in spurts. Part of it is other than that Maryland game, because the ACC has been down, they haven't really had a chance. Like, you walk into the year thinking you're going to play 5 teams that are all going to be in the top 10 in the country, and it didn't happen that way. So, while, I mean, like, usually their conference carries a lot more weight than it has this year, I think that's hurt them.
Then how do you explain the performances against, like, Duke? You know, and when that was the opportunity you talked about. That was their chance.
Duke was desperate. Like, it's the same thing I just said with the Harvard-Princeton game.
Okay, well, fine. That's a fine argument, but a lot of these other teams that are ranked behind Virginia in this poll have been a lot more consistent over the course of the season. We've seen some of their best performances as the year has gone on. I mean, Yale's got wins against Princeton, Penn, even BU, and Denver, and Yale is number 9, opposed to Virginia's number 4. To me, Yale has been a better they've got a couple of head-scratching losses.
But see, that goes back to the consistency thing. They haven't, both of them, I would argue, haven't been all that consistent.
But all of those wins I just mentioned are better than Virginia's.
The only reason
all of those wins.
But like last week, you could have flip-flopped these two. The only reason Virginia now is ahead of them is because in the media poll, Virginia won and Yale lost. Like, that's why this is the way it is. It's the same reason why when I voted Princeton number 3, I knew, and somebody had tweeted this, because they said, Rutgers is going to be number 3, but I see what your argument is. Because Princeton lost, all of a sudden they have to fall. I don't agree with that. I think at this point of the year, you can do a little bit more jockeying, especially after half these teams have played each other, and no one cares about the head-to-head anymore.
Yeah, I guess I feel like the body of work for some of these teams earned them more, maybe even in the past. Like you said, it's hard to jump a team all that much at this point. It's like a batting average in baseball where you've got 500 at-bats and you go 4 for 4 and your average goes up 3 points at this point. So there's more to it. So I feel like maybe some of these Ivy League teams deserved a little bit better earlier on in the year when we were talking about how great the Ivy League was and how great they did out of conference and the RPIs and all that. It doesn't add up to me. All this doesn't add up in terms of the Tewaaraton and all, like Ivy League this, Ivy League that. They're going to get 5 teams in. ACC might get 1. Big Ten might get 2.
So then what's your problem with the poll?
My problem with the poll is the Ivy League should be they should have more teams in the top 10.
But you can't have everybody in the top 10.
Yes,
there's not enough. Because
we finished 2020 in Ivy League at what? 4 to top 5?
But here's the thing. Maryland has to be in the top, and Maryland has to be number 1. Georgetown has to be in the top 10.
Yeah.
Rutgers, do you think Rutgers should be in?
The top 10?
Yes.
Maybe towards 8 or 9, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, but still a top 10 team.
Yeah.
Virginia has to be in the top 10.
Towards the
but they're
behind
in.
some of those teams we discussed.
But they're in, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Ohio State has to be in the top 10. They beat Harvard. That win
they
looks a lot better now than it did when it happened.
You can intermingle any of the Ivy League teams in between those, and I'd be fine. You can take Jacksonville out of there. You can probably take Notre Dame out there at this point. You can probably.
I don't know. Notre Dame has played well. I don't know if Notre Dame's the number 6 team in the country, but I think Notre Dame's probably.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking in the bracketology, one ACC team and you got 2 in the top 6, that doesn't make sense either. Right? I mean,
well, Notre Dame. I mean, I think Notre Dame's got to figure out. Bracketology is like a week-to-week thing, and it doesn't take into account what's going to happen down the stretch of the season. So Notre Dame wins against Syracuse and.
I mean, I think
Duke.
I mean, Notre Dame wins out, they're in, and Virginia's in too. So you get 2 ACC teams.
I think at the end of the day, we're going to get 2 ACC teams and probably 5 Ivy League teams in. I think it'll end up. I mean, I think that'll be fair.
2 ACC teams, 5 Ivy League teams, and that'll add up to the amount of teams you have. If Patriot
just
League
about everybody.
I mean, Patriot League lost their second bid with Army's lost. If that was ever even a question, that's gone now. Whoever wins Patriot League's in, and other than that, I mean, that's about it. I mean, Big Ten should get 2.
Big Ten will get an extra. Big Ten will get Rutgers and probably Ohio State.
Other than you think they'll get 3 then?
Yeah.
In addition to Maryland, okay. I think that math adds up.
Yeah, I think that figures it out because I just. If Cornell, like I was saying this earlier, if Cornell doesn't find their way into the Ivy League tournament, that loss to Army is going to haunt them.
Yeah,
like that. I think that knocks them out. And as much as they were the talk early in the season, it's not going to add up. And so, like some of these teams, like Brown's another example. Brown doesn't find their way in the Ivy League tournament. Like they're not like. The resume outside of it, it's as good as some of these wins are. I don't know if it adds up.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, my main thing here is I'm really intrigued at how this perception and RPI is more of a numbers game, but how that impacts seeding in the NCAA tournament as well. With some of these Ivy League teams that might not be getting, or maybe they'll get a better seed than a lot of people think because the RPI is better than what the voters are saying right now.
I
think that's also something we can consider when you're thinking about all of this. I think that's also a big part, and maybe there's some disconnect between that media poll and the RPI numbers and some of those quality wins and such, where there will be teams that aren't seeded or that impact some of those first-round matchups that we know are going to be really key.
I'm going to put this on the record and saying that the seeding is going to matter so little this year.
True.
What we've seen.
Right. Yes, you don't want to run to Maryland and you don't want to run to Georgetown. I'm telling you right now. Those 2 teams I would not want to face.
Yeah, but both of them will probably get the winners of the 2 playing games.
Yeah.
So the most of these teams aren't going to have to worry about that in the first round.
Okay.
I agree with you. You don't want to play them in the quarters.
You don't want to do that either.
You want to be the 3 or 4 seed.
Yeah.
Or no, sorry, 2. Yeah, you want to be the 3 seed.
You want to be the 3 seed, yeah.
3 seed or yeah, you want to be the 3 seed.
Which there will be a competition for that, depending on how the rest of the season goes.
It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, you look at the RPI right now, and Yale has the 4th best RPI in the country. So
could be Yale.
I mean, it could be Yale.
Got to win. I mean,
Yale is ranked 9th in the nation right now in the media poll. Just saying. So if you're confused about this stuff, then
they just lost. If they finish out the way they're supposed to finish out, they'll move up.
Okay, all right.
And they'll be right where you know what? They're just going to play their way into whether they're a top 5 team or just a top 10, top 12 team. We'll find out.
They will.
In the next 2 weeks.
That's a astute observation.
Play their way either way. All right. Done. Anyway, you got more poll talk because you have a problem with the women's poll.
Oh, we're rolling on the women's stuff. Okay.
Well,
I just think Maryland deserves some more respect. Come on.
They're getting lots of respect.
They should be the number 2 team.
4th team in the country.
They should be the 2nd-ranked team in the nation. To me, yes, I understand why maybe Boston College gets the benefit of the doubt here. Syracuse, who has competed with everybody, but I think Maryland, you beat Northwestern. And it's not like you did it in a fluke-like fashion. This was an all-and-out encompassing effort over the number 2 team in the nation. And yes, Maryland lost the game to JMU. I understand that. But that's one loss, and Northwestern has a couple of. Syracuse has a couple of those. Boston College has a couple of losses. It feels like one bad loss probably should add up to 2 losses for some of these other teams. And Maryland is not just this fluky type team. To me, they right now are better than Boston College. I will put Maryland on the same rung, if not better than BC, top to bottom. I'm taking Maryland in that game.
if they were to play tomorrow.
Okay.
I think they're deep enough offensively, and I think that defensively, with their goalie, Emily Sterling, playing as well as she has, they are, to me, a front runner right now for a championship weekend, if not the championship game, and go and try to tackle North Carolina. That's why, to me, they're the number 2 team in the nation. There's your argument.
Okay. By the way, I had a chance to talk to Emily Sterling today. You can hear that interview on Thursday.
Okay.
So make sure you tune in on Thursday to the show. Hear from the Maryland star goalie, who's been the best goalie in the country. She's going to be an All-American for the Terps. I have no problem with Maryland, and I actually voted Maryland number 3 over Syracuse at 4 because of that win over Northwestern. That is, I honestly probably, the win over Northwestern, from what we've seen from Northwestern this year, probably is definitely better than any win Syracuse has so far this season, because they've come up just short against BC and North Carolina.
Yeah, and Syracuse has competed through and through in those games. I just don't think that they have what Maryland does right now.
I think Boston College has more than Maryland. I think they have they've got more of depth of scoring at the top offensively, and I think despite the fact that Rachel Hall has struggled at times, I think they can run with the best teams in the country. We saw it against North Carolina. Like, they challenged them to the very end, and there's maybe 1-2 other teams in the country that can do that. I don't know if Maryland can go up and down with Carolina yet. I just from what we've seen in their schedule, I haven't seen it.
I feel like since they're Maryland, they do have the contrast in style that maybe can flummox North Carolina a little bit more compared to a Boston College that will run and they will play that game, and then you have Charlotte North involved, and Maryland, with some of the way they try to work their offense, of course, through Roar accordingly, there's other options there. It's not just top heavy. And I think BC's a little top heavy. I know that coming on, and she's been incredible, Belle Smith. She could be, maybe if not one of the best players, she could be a
She's going to be
finalist.
The next.
She's the next great one to come out of there. But you look at Maryland, and you got Lubicker, who scores goals with the best of them. Libby May is right behind Lubicker. So you can't just say this is just a two-headed monster. Libby May has 42 goals. Lubicker has 43. And there's some other options there, too, that I think on both the defensive end, Tori Beretta alongside Abby Bosco, and then you have, of course, Emily Sterling. They have a lot of things in place that are not, like, I talk about the Maryland men, you look for weaknesses. There's not many on this Maryland women's team.
No, there aren't a lot of weaknesses for the BC.
No, there aren't.
So,
I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I'm not saying there aren't. I think there are a couple more that you could look at with a microscope and say, well, you match these two teams up on paper, and Maryland right now would win that game.
I don't know.
And of course, I will put a disclaimer in. If Charlotte North does otherworldly things, as we've seen her do, that will be a determining factor in who could win the game.
I think that's the X factor. Like, you look at these games that the one game, really, that Charlotte North has kind of been held in check against one of these great teams was Duke, and they lost. But otherwise, like against Carolina, she got hers. Against Syracuse, she got hers. Like, she's getting hers against all the other best teams in the country. I just don't see it being different against Maryland. Okay. I just don't. And so I don't know. I really do think that she's the X factor that puts them above a team like a Maryland or a Syracuse or a Northwestern. I think she's the one that gets them the benefit of the doubt. Now, I mean, they could, if something happens here in the ACC tournament and Boston College doesn't end up playing North Carolina in the championship, then maybe I feel differently. But until this point, like, they've had one chink in the armor other than the loss to Carolina that was as good as any game we've seen this year, and that was the loss on the road against Duke. Yeah, and, we can say the same thing for Maryland. They've had one chink in the armor, the loss against JMU that I thought that was a spark to their season. I think it has been now. Changed everything for them, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, like, this is what the loss, well, you learn from the loss more than a win. So I'm big on Maryland. Syracuse, yes, they have overcome injury, it feels like, after injury the last 2 years, sometimes without missing a beat. Yeah. But I feel like with what the other teams have and the way they stack up, Syracuse is going to compete. They're going to be close. They just need that little bit extra, right? And that's what you've seen a lot of these teams do with the transfer portal. They brought in just a little bit extra to be able to get to that top rung. And I think Syracuse is one rung below just because of that. I do think that there is a little bit of last year's Boston College team to this year's Syracuse roster, with the caveat that if Kimber Hauer gets hot like Rachel Hall did in the tournament last year, Syracuse, could be the difference maker because Syracuse, and I was saying this on the Syracuse TV station I went on to talk about the Syracuse women's program earlier today. And
big plug there.
Big plug. Shout out News Channel 9 in Syracuse. But seriously, if she gets going in the right direction, like Syracuse has shown the ability to score with every other team in the country. They've kept, and it's not even just been this year. It's been the same depth of talent offensively that is hung with put up goals against Boston College. They've put up goals against North Carolina. They've put up goals against Northwestern. They've done it against them. Can you get enough stops? And I think that's always going to be the difference against a team like a Carolina or a BC. And I think if Kimber Howard catches fire at the right time, I think that could be a difference maker, similar to what we saw from Rachel Hall last year in the NCAA tournament.
I think I don't know how healthy Megan Carney is. Obviously, she's missed a bunch of games. She
played against BC on Friday.
She did play against BC. I just don't know how healthy she's going to be able to be during a stretch run or a tournament run in which you kind of have to be healthy. It's hard to go into that at 50% or whatever she might be. She is such a game changer for them. And I think that's going to be tough with already losing an Emma Tyrell and Emma Ward to start the year. Those rack up and those add up. It just feels like at the time in which you need everybody, all hands on deck. And yeah, Syracuse did it last season when losing Emily Hawryschuk, who made their offense go. We've seen how dynamic she is still to this day. It just is a little bit harder to get over the top. At the very end when you need that extra source of light. And I think for them, it's tough to see because you know how much they fight. And that's, to me, what's so fun about the Syracuse women's team. They continue, the next woman up mentality is incredible with that program. And I love the way they come together to do it.
Yeah, I do think, though, look at what they've done. And they haven't won these games, but they've played North Carolina and BC as tough as just about anybody else in the country.
Yeah, they have.
I'm just saying, all it takes is one game. I'd give them a shot.
Okay. Yeah, I think a one-game scenario.
If I were to project who my top four seeds would be right now in the women's game, I would have Carolina, BC, Maryland, and Syracuse.
Carolina, BC, Maryland, Syracuse. That's the top four teams in the country right now.
Yeah, but I would flip-flop Maryland and Syracuse and where they are in this poll, and I think put them in my poll.
Which would be big because that would then pit
Syracuse against Carolina in the Final Four.
In the Final Four, yeah.
But you would get there. All it takes is, like we found out last year, you just got to get to championship weekend, see what happens.
Yeah, and then you have a team, you have Northwestern right now on the outside looking in of that. If Northwestern can take that forward, this Big Ten tournament for the women is going to be huge when it comes to that. Yeah. Because you're probably playing for the fourth spot.
Yeah, you're probably playing for a top four seed. The winner has to probably find their way into it.
Unless Duke does something crazy in the ACC tournament. Something happens there.
But I think at that point, if Duke would surprise people, I think Duke steals it away from a Syracuse or whoever, or like a BC, instead of taking it away from whoever wins the Big Ten.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that BC, the fact that they're 2 this week shows me a lot. That the fact that they, I think that Maryland should be there, and they're not. BC's pretty highly regarded, and if you go to I don't know what the bracket looks like right now, but if whatever happens, BC wins a couple games and they're there at the end, and Duke is also there, and Duke ends up winning it. I don't know. You put 3 teams, in that in the top 4 seeds. It's going to be interesting.
Find out.
I don't know.
I think there are going to be 3
curious.
ACC teams in the top 4 seeds.
You think there's be 3? Yeah, I guess that would make sense. Yeah, you're right.
But I think it would be Syracuse that would probably get bumped out of that.
Syracuse lifted out, and you don't have 4. You can mean 4. There won't be 4 teams in the top.
There won't be 4 ACC teams in the top 4.
Right, that just won't happen.
Right. Anyway, speaking of Syracuse,
let's keep on rolling here. Yeah.
Orange,
we're going strong.
Getting ready to play Virginia to kick off the ACC tournament on Friday. Interesting situation with the ACC women's tournament, by the way. They got the quarterfinals and the semifinals this weekend. Those are at Notre Dame, plus the play-in game that's coming up here on Wednesday. And then you get a whole week off. The top 2 teams then head to whoever is the top remaining seed will host the championship game. So a little different format this year.
Okay. That's very interesting.
Yeah, you get a week off. Usually it was right through. It was hey, we got 3 games in 4 days. Let's see what happens.
I kind of like that. You don't have the war of attrition as much, and you get at a week like you normally would to get that chance to prepare for a team, which could help
the quality of that championship game more than ever.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Especially with a lot on the line, as we just told you.
For sure. So, Emily Hawryschuk, Syracuse, getting ready to play Virginia, but I had a chance to catch up with Syracuse's now all-time leading goal scorer prior to that. So Emily Hawryschuk from Syracuse joins us now. Emily, first off, I've got to ask you about your own individual record because you became the all-time leading goal scorer in Syracuse history this past week in that win over UAlbany. Just sum it up, like what that feels like, especially when you break your coach's record.
It was an incredible feeling and definitely a surreal moment. And I think it just goes to the depths of, Syracuse lacrosse history, having it be against UAlbany with Coach Katie Rowan there. You have Alyssa Murray commentating. So before the game, we ended up taking the picture of the four of us, and I literally had chills. And I said to all of them, I said, I feel so nervous right now because I looked up to all of these women growing up. So it was a very special moment. But in the end, I just want to win a national championship. So that's what we're working for.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to ask about the picture because that's got to be one like you're going to keep for a long time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Growing up, I literally had these women, their, magazine articles hanging up in my room. So absolutely role models.
You grew up not too far from Syracuse, obviously from Victor, New York, outside Rochester. You come back because you want to be part of this program and take them somewhere they've never been. What's it been like to have this final run, especially after how your year ended last year?
Yeah, I think even when you look back to a couple years ago and you look at, the 2020 year and the Syracuse program, we brought back 10 out of our 11 seniors. And I think it's a huge testament to how amazing this program is. And even though last year individually didn't shake out the way that I hoped it would, I feel so lucky and so honored to still continue to put on the jersey and to truly finish what, the team set out to do last year, what we've set out to do the last, many years. And that's to bring home the national championship back to Syracuse.
Especially after the COVID year and then for you, the injury, like what's the appreciation of just every week having the opportunity to go out there and play?
I have so much appreciation and you can't take anything for granted. I've never dealt with an injury before, even to the point of me sitting out of practice up until, dealing with an ACL last year. So I think with any injury, it's a process through the recovery, but I think you learn a lot about yourself. And I think through that, I grew a lot as, a person. And I truly found that love for the game coming back. And not that I lost it before, but it's just a greater appreciation for that. And, to come back and have so many amazing teammates surrounding me and an amazing group of incoming freshmen and a few transfers, I think this team is absolutely amazing.
Where's your game at? Obviously, you came back off the injury. You've had pretty much a full season here so far. Like, where do you feel like you're all the way back? Does it all feel the same now?
It's interesting. I still find myself, in my mind thinking about how I was prior to injury, and I think this season, I know it's in the beginning it was tough. I think it was mentally, physically. Through the ACL recovery process, it's broken up into phases for the most part, where you're working to walk, you're working to run, you're working to build back to play. But I think the hardest part that I dealt with through that process was that final piece, and truly coming back to playing lacrosse free and fearlessly. So I think it's definitely been a journey. So I feel good. I'm still working to continue to be better every day though.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the mental thing is the hardest part because you can be out there going through the motions, but until like you just do it and you forget about the fact that at some point you had an injury, like you don't feel completely 100% there.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, but I am grateful to have gone through it with Meg Carney and to still have her there, and we have another season where we just have a few too many injuries, but what comes from that is you bond with those girls. So just to, lean on each other and learn from each other, I think it's awesome.
You hit on it. What is it about the culture of this team that, like, whether last year, this team lost so many and you still make the run of the championship. This year, you lose a couple of key contributors again due to injury, and you guys are still there in the top 5 in the country. What is it about the culture around this program that has allowed you guys to just say, you know what? I know we lost a big piece, but we can figure it out, and we're still going to be the team that everybody thinks we can be.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about this culture and Syracuse lacrosse as a whole is we're a family. And I think we truly buy into that. And, when one person goes down, we're ready to handle the adversity because we know that we're going to do it for the player who just went down. So I think it's something where we constantly talking about taking lacrosse for granted, or rather not taking it for granted, and just, playing and being grateful for that, but also playing for the girls who can't. And I think that's something that we've done a great job at, using that to our advantage and truly playing for each other every day.
You obviously have a new coach this year in Kayla Trainer. You obviously learned a ton from Gary Gate, but what have you picked up from Kayla and all that she brings to not only being a coach on the sideline, but what she has brought as a player as well?
Yeah, Coach Kayla is amazing. And again, she's one who I looked up to for many years. So not many get to say that they get to, play for the person that they looked up to. But she's awesome. She's an amazing player. And I've never had her in, player coaching role. So, I think the way that she is able to articulate the game and share it with us, I think that's one of the coolest things about her, where she's so knowledgeable when it comes to the game, and the way that she shares it with the rest of the team. I think it's very cool.
What did you guys learn from this past weekend's loss to BC?
We learned a lot. And I think the one of the biggest things that stood out to us was it was another game where if we put together a full 60 minutes, then the score might have been different. But we learned that we have a ton of fight in us, and we broke down the film yesterday, and it's a lot of errors go back to us. So it's something where it's not like it's out of reach to come back and play them again with a different outcome. It's something where if we can focus more on us and limiting our mistakes, then it'll hopefully be a much different outcome.
I mean, you guys probably feel it differently. I mean, like for us in the media, we talk about your program, and then there's also Carolina and BC, and we've seen Duke in the ACC. You guys are getting ready for this ACC tournament, and it just looks like it's going to be just a gauntlet of games that you'll have to go through. When you look around at the rest of the conference and all the competition that you faced this year and are going to face here in the next week, what do you see?
I love it. I love the challenge. And I think the rest of the team is ready for that challenge too. This entire season, we've talked about, the next game being the most important. So, without a doubt, this Virginia game on Friday is going to be extremely important. But we also know that when you play in the ACC, there isn't ever an easy game. So we're ready for it. We're excited for it. And I think it's going to be a fun weekend.
We mentioned already that you grew up outside Rochester. So I have to ask, what's on your garbage plate?
On my garbage plate, I have 2 hamburgers. I don't go for the cheese. 2 hamburgers, mac salad, side of home fries, meat sauce on the side, ketchup, mustard, a little bit of onions.
So you go meat sauce on the side?
I do. I don't know if that's correct, but that's what I do.
But see, that's a veteran play, because most people who aren't used to it just say like, all right, whatever, it's on it, give it to me. But so you know how to handle this.
Yes.
Where's your spot?
Nick Tahoe's is the original. It's the best. But in Victor, we have Mac Phillies, which is pretty good. But I think the best in Victor would have to be at the Thirsty Turtle.
Oh, okay. We got all sorts of spots to go check out. Back on the field quickly here before we go. I mean, we mentioned before, you come back because this team got so close to a national championship last year, and you want to come back to help them finish it off. How do you kind of keep that all in perspective throughout the year, and now knowing that you're so close to making that push for that ultimate goal? How do you continue to keep that in perspective as you also kind of go week by week and game by game?
Yeah, I think you have to continue to go week by week, game by game. And, I think in the end, it's taking away game by game. And we have the ultimate goal, and we're also in the postseason where nothing is guaranteed. So having that mindset and truly buying into that, and knowing that, every play that we make, it might be our last if we don't show up and give everything that we have.
Well, Emily, we can't wait to see what you guys do here in the ACC tournament and then, of course, in the NCAAs as well. Good luck, and we'll hopefully talk sometime here down the road.
Thank you so much.
So always good to hear from Emily Hawryschuk. She's been through so much, and she's encountered it all and really come out on top in all of that. Really cool to see her recovery and the way she's come back. Like it's like she hasn't missed a beat.
Yeah, and you can tell her appreciation for the ability to come back, play one more year, and how bad she wants to finish off strong.
Yeah, that's really cool. All right, so let's transition here because we had Army-Navy over the weekend.
Men's
for the
and women's.
Women and the men, and it was wild, to say the least. And we didn't expect either of these results, in my opinion. And I think we'll start with the men, Army-Navy men. With the men. And, going into that game, I was like, Army, if they win out, we said that, maybe they could be possibly looking at an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament if they were to lose in the final of the Patriot League. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case because once you get a rivalry together, then everything is out the window. And Navy playing their best game of the year, the difference that Xavier Arline has made for them, you could see it on the field tangibly, the way he makes that offense go. But I want to talk about Pat Ryan for the Navy men, the goalie, 11 saves. And his journey the last couple of weeks has been incredible. He made one save against BU. One save. The next game, he makes 17 against Loyola. Yeah, they lost 18-7. But, you come back from one save to 17.
That's a huge bounce
You start to see the ball a lot better. 11 against Lafayette, 11 against Army in their biggest rivalry game of the season, one that was their championship. So props to him for what a performance there.
And props to Joe Amplo because you just, you know that Joe Amplo's teams are going to get up for some of these big games. Yeah. And they're going to be you knew that this wasn't going to be easy for Army, I think, going in, just because of how well coached the team is and then what the rivalry means and how big the atmosphere is. And for him to get this team up, to knock off this Army team that had everything to play for. Like, we talk about desperation, and not only is Army playing to try to keep your at-large hopes alive, you're playing for seeding in the Patriot League tournament that this kind of blew up to open up things even more. And so for Navy to go on the road and get this win is just gigantic. You mentioned Xavier Arline. I remember watching him in one of the USA U19 tryout processes for the team that's eventually going to play here this summer. And he had more moves. His dodging ability was just electric. And that's the difference maker because he can beat just about anybody you put on him. And that opens up stuff for everybody else in the offense. So he has 4 points, but it just completely changes what the defense has to handle. And him being healthy, I think, has been a big difference maker for Navy. But I think this is a more impressive win than the Hopkins win. But I think you put this on par with what they did against Hopkins. Yeah. Where it was like nobody really gave Navy a shot going in. Yeah. And they gave you your best shot, and all they needed was to be in it down the stretch, and that's exactly what they did. They go back and forth. They find a way to win in overtime. Yeah, an incredible game, and, of course, the atmosphere between Navy and Army is always amazing. At that, too, so that rivalry, so cool. So the women, everyone expected Navy to beat Army in that situation, and the opposite happened at that. The crazy thing to me about this game is that Navy beat Army in every single category. You look at the shots taken, draw controls, turnovers, clearing, everything except on the scoreboard. And that's what you love about rivalry games because sometimes all those things can add up. You can do everything right, but just some of those intangibles and the will to win, Army had it and beat Navy. And for the first time ever. Yeah, right. That's a program-defining win on top of all of that. Because, for Army and the women's program, it has to be so hard because you're still so relatively new in the grand scheme of things. I think this is only year 7 of Army's program history. And so your big sister, who's your main rival, has this long history. They have Cindy Timchaw, one of the most legendary figures in the sport, who's leading this program. And not only that, they're in your conference. Right. So everything that they have, you won. And so this puts you finally on par with your big rivals. It's like your big sister. It's like no more. Like we caught up.
Yeah.
And that's what I think makes this so big.
I think playing Loyola helped Army big time because they got a sense of what the elites are about. You know what I mean? And, Army went on that run where they won 10 straight games this year. They had lost a couple, and Loyola was a part of that. But I think when you see it and you're like, oh, this is what it's going to take to win a game like this, and then you go up against Navy a little while after that, I think that really helped them. And, I mean, it's the first win for them as a program over a ranked opponent, too. So you look at what the things that Michelle Tumolo has done with this program in year one with a lot of younger players. You lost a lot of upperclassmen after last year. She came in and she's done a great job. And I think you can't say enough about that. And it's so cool to see such a great player do such a great job all at once and in such a cool place like Army.
Well, speaking of Coach Tumolo, I had a chance to catch up with her earlier today. Let's listen in on what this meant for her in this program. So coming off that gigantic win over rival Navy, we have Army head coach Michelle Tumolo. Michelle, just sum up what Saturday was like.
Oh, man, so many emotions. I got emotional before the game, during the game, after the game. It's just such an incredible rivalry. And for myself and my staff to be a part of it for the first time ever was just amazing. But I just wanted it so bad for this team and these young women. So for them to be able to get the job done made me feel incredible. For them to be able to smile and just be so proud of themselves. It was an amazing feeling.
You hit on it. Everybody knows Army-Navy. It doesn't matter what sport, what's happening. Like, that is one of the rivalries in all of college sports. From somebody who had been on the outside to now being part of it, like, is it everything that you expected it to be?
Yes, for sure. I think everyone here that's been a part of it couldn't wait for me to be in my first Army-Navy game because they're just like, you just got to be in it to be able to like understand it. I totally get the hype. It lived up to its expectations, win or loss. Just the opportunity to be a part of it is incredible. But I'm just so proud of our young women, and they get to put on their Army jersey and be able to be a part of history forever. Team 7 will be in the history books forever. So for me to be able to lead them through that opportunity has been, a once in a lifetime opportunity, truly.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned for this team, like especially for the players who have been part of this program for a while, and it's a young program. Like, what was it like to see their emotions finally getting a win over Navy when this is like probably one of the ones that they've dreamed of for a long time?
Yeah, keyword dream. We said that in our pregame speech. Katrina hit on it. This is what people dream of, especially the people in the locker room. This is what you dream of. You dream of beating Navy. And what was cool that we incorporated our alums. I asked them to send in pump up videos. And so we showed that to the team the night before. And I just know that the alums are so proud of our team, and I'm proud to be able to give that to them. They can finally say that they were a part of something that, had beaten Navy, even if they weren't on the field or on the sideline. They have to feel great about it because they built this thing. So for the girls on the team and the alums, I just think they're on top of the world, and they deserve every bit of it.
I think we talked about it when you first took the job. It's such a unique situation because you're accomplishing firsts at a place where it's one of the oldest institutions we have in this country. There aren't a lot of firsts still to accomplish. So to be part of a team that is able to do a first is got to be pretty special.
Oh, yeah. At the end of the hallway is Coach Alberisi and his men's staff. And, they've been, around for a long time. Their program's been around for a long time. So I lean on them a lot. But to see their support in our program, something that's so young and new, has been incredible. But yeah, it feels great. It really does. But the best part of it all is that we still have season left, and we're going to ride this high, and we need to make sure we come down to earth a little bit today though, too, and be able to beat Lafayette on Friday and be able to extend our season. So as great as this feels, and we'll be able to feel this for the rest of our lives, we got some more business to take care of. And I'm just proud of our team for being able to accomplish something so big.
Well, and you were hitting my next question. How do you follow this up? How do you channel all the emotion and the energy that goes into a win like that, knowing that, you got to turn around and try to get a win this week so you guys can, push ahead to the Patriot League tournament?
Yeah, you obviously want to relish in it, and just being able to be in the locker room, in our meeting room yesterday, I just felt so many smiles and just such good feelings. And that's like what you want. And we've felt that way a lot this season with having a 10-game win streak and doing things we had never done, or, accomplishing our goals. But obviously this is the top of our list, and being able to ride that momentum. And I think confidence is the biggest thing that comes out of this, and poise. And we keep the motto of humble and hungry. And now that we've been able to accomplish one of our goals, we still have more on the list to check off. So yeah, coming into practice this week is huge. And our next task is Lafayette.
Speaking of confidence, it's hard to imagine that your goalie Lacey has anything but just incredible confidence after what she did on Saturday. Like, could you feel this coming, a game like that from her, or did this stand out?
Yeah, we always ask our players to rise to the challenge and rise to the occasion. And we knew that she needed to have that kind of game for us to be able to get the win and full team, but the goal circle is so important. They're going to shoot, they're going to get shots off. You just got to be able to take that extra step and commit to the ball. And she did exactly that. I got to give props to our goalie coach, volunteer coach, Ted Glenn. He just has them super locked in, and Katrina and Ella shoot on them every single day. So for Lacey to be able to get this win and get that confidence on the ring is huge, especially when we have a Loyola in our conference, some of the best shooters in the game. So I'm so incredibly happy and proud of her. She deserves all the hype.
I mean, like as any offensive player, sometimes all it takes is a hot goalie and a team can just ride that thing.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I know what it's like to play really good goalies. And I also know what it's like to see goalies, maybe not have their best game. So it's tough. I could never get in that goal circle. I give them all the props in the world.
It's much better when it's your goalie making all the saves than when you're shooting against somebody else who's locked in.
Exactly, which we've seen before, and it's very frustrating, but it's good. No, it's awesome.
I do want to say back to one last thing about this Navy game, because I saw the celebration in the locker room afterward, and a couple of Cuse alums, it made me think a lot of Jacksonville's John Galloway and his celebration. Have you channeled like your inner John dancing through the locker room as you celebrate a big win?
Oh, I love John. I reached out to him recently, just being like, I just love what he's doing there. And I think it's the Cuse way. We're just like authentically ourselves. And I think that being close with your team and being able to be yourself in front of your team and completely emotional or funny or goofy is exactly what I am in front of my team. And I love going into my team and dancing with them before games, after games, whatever it is. It's a really cool feeling. And for them to be able to be that excited, it's just an awesome experience. So yeah, I love seeing John's videos, and I guess we could call it the Cuse way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Matt Kinnear, in the write-up that he did for Inside Lacrosse, mentioned your shoes, and you've got a pretty nice high top game of Nikes. Like, what's been your strategy of wearing them throughout the season?
Yeah, I'm super superstitious. I wore those in our win streak, but I did lose in them. So then I kind of took them off for a game, and then I put them back on. Katrina and I both wear those a lot. The black and white is super fresh. I also got another pair on right now too, the low dunks. But you got to look fresh on the sidelines, especially when you're on CBS Sports.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's a recruiting pitch too. Kids love the kicks now. So
I know the kids love everything these days. You gotta. I might be semi-young in my coaching career, but I gotta stay with the times,
Hey, you've been successful so far there at Army. I do want to ask about another Syracuse alum real quick before we go, and that's Liz Hogan, who has a chance to finally be part of this Team USA roster, something that you've done in the past. And I know Liz and everything that she's worked to finally be part of this roster. What's it like to see her finally have a chance at a world championship team?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. It makes me so happy. I have been on a team where I've been cut and she's been cut, and then I made it, and then she was cut again. So to see her finally get the opportunity that she deserves, truly, she deserves it, and played her freaking heart out for years and years and years, just makes me super, super excited. And I can't wait to see what she does at the World Cup. I can't wait to cheer her on and the rest of my teammates. But I'm just elated for her. She deserves it.
Yeah, I mean, we graduated the same year back in 2011, me and Liz, and like to see her still at it all these years later to finally make a team is just like incredible heart and determination. A lot of players wouldn't have kept going.
Yeah, is she gonna wear her football pants, Team USA football pants or whatnot? Let's see, right?
She's got to break them out, at least for a game, right?
Exactly. I agree.
Michelle, congratulations. Such an incredible moment for you guys in this program. We can't wait to see what you do here the rest of the way. Good luck this weekend, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, Travis. I appreciate it. Go Army.
Michelle Tumolo, always great to have on the program. So
yeah.
She's always great, a great ambassador for lacrosse
for sure.
and for that program and everything there is to talk about there. And we lost one of those great ambassadors for the sport yesterday, and Richie Moran, the longtime Cornell coach, and like as we know, and one of the premier ambassadors of the sport over the last few decades and years. And our thoughts and prayers go to him and his family, and just the impact he made, because you go on lacrosse Twitter. We talk so much about lacrosse Twitter, and to unite everybody, it takes a special person and a special thing, and he certainly was that to so many people.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stood out to me, I had a chance to talk to him a couple of years ago. It was actually during the pandemic. I was doing it from my apartment for the Tewaaraton Foundation as one of their legacy people. And one of the things that stood out to me is how connected he still was to the Cornell program all these years later. Like all these players, whether it's now Connor Busick as the head coach or Rob Pennell was posting on Instagram about his relationship with Coach Moran. And Coach Moran hadn't coached for a long time before Rob Pennell was there. And there was still this tie in this relationship with him and the current players of these last couple of generations. And I think that says a lot, not only about his love for Cornell, but also Cornell's appreciation for all that he did for that program, because it goes both ways in terms of wanting to have a legendary coach around the program like he's been. And he obviously was still up in Ithaca in the last several years. And it's a big loss because he was quite the personality and quite the figure, and a guy who would talk your ear off.
Yeah, it didn't matter who you were either.
Yeah, I mean, I had never met the guy. I talked to him for 15 minutes. I think I asked 2 questions. Like,
right.
He wanted to talk about the game and his wooden stick and what he was used to playing with and the transition. He had such appreciation for where the game was when he was coaching and playing, and then where it has kind of evolved into now.
I think too often in sports we're tied to who's the next, Michael Jordan, if you will, in basketball, who's the next this or that. But I think you need to recognize, too, that there's just some individuals that's exactly what they are. They are one of a kind, and he was one of those people that he will always stand on his own in this game, in this sport. And that's a legacy, I think, that a lot of people need to remember and recognize, as the sport tries to move forward, tries to grow. You have to fall back on some of those individuals that have really been at the grassroots of that from the very beginning when things just started to sprout. Here in the United States.
And he had an impact in 2 of the great programs in the sport. He played at Maryland. Obviously, John Tillman has posted a lot about Coach Moran here over the last couple of days since his passing, and obviously then became a great coach at Cornell. So he will have a lasting impact for those programs and for the entirety of the sport long after his passing. But once again, thoughts and prayers to his family and everybody he touched throughout the lacrosse community, because he was an important figure.
Yeah, and if you can live with the joy he had, you're going to be living a pretty happy life.
For sure.
Right? And the appreciation for things. I think sometimes that's lost on some people. Get all intensely into the games and the matchups and all that. It's a good time to just sit back and say, what a great sport this is, this competition and these athletes. It's also good to appreciate that, too. He was a burning example of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But that's all the time we have for this show. We will see you back here on Thursday. We've got Emily Sterling from Maryland, the Maryland goalie, and Arden Cohen, Notre Dame's defenseman, both on the show there on Thursday. 2 terrific interviews. Get ready for the final weekend of the regular season. For most parts, some tournament talk as well, because we got tournament starting, so it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, should be a great time, as we always do, get you ready for lacrosse on the weekend. So that'll do it for our show today. Travis, Tom, we will see you next time.